But Caro, there's been some pivotal meetings in recent days, not just with the competition committee, but with some pretty senior figures in the game. What can you tell us?
Yes, and both of them, in fact, were attended by our very own Eddie McGuire. And before I start, Ed, on behalf of all Victorians, the hard yards you did for us at the Pink Flamingo, a big thanks, and from the panel as well. It's terrific.
That's
well
okay,
done.
Caro. I was trying to look through the window to see if I could see Trent Cotchin and his budgie smugglers, just to see if you got excited as well.
We might get to that later, Caro.
No, quite seriously, the presidents and the CEOs met on Monday. And Ed, my understanding is, and we haven't discussed this, full disclosure, but I understand that Gillon McLachlan painted a relatively rosy picture in terms of the losses the game has suffered, 100 million in total, far less than had been anticipated 6 months ago. Clubs about 60 million, the AFL 40 million. But what interested me, Ed, is that I understand Gillon McLachlan, the CEO, could not guarantee that the AFL would be able to cover the total player payments next year, still not knowing, of course, how much money will be in the game and what they are going to have to pay the players. I'm told that a block of the wealthier clubs, including your very own Collingwood, Richmond, West Coast, Hawthorn, and I understand Essendon, are determined that the AFL do cover the full TPP for all the clubs and your clubs, and there's some doubt about that at the moment.
Well, there's a lot in that question, Caroline. But look, first of all, $100 million is still $100 million, even if at first blush it was thought to maybe get out even more than that, even up to $400 million. But $100 million, let me just say that figure again, $100 million. That's a lot of money to lose in one season, and with no understanding yet of what season 21 is going to look like. So, yeah, Gill has got the job ahead of him with Paul Marsh from the Players Association to sit down and work out the total player payments. No one's sure exactly what's going on at the moment. There have been discussions, yes, about the total player payments being covered by the AFL. Seems to be pretty self-evident that should be the case. Now, that's not arguing one way or the other, but if we all know what the total player payment is and it's guaranteed by the dividends to all clubs, then the AFL can decide, the AFL Commission can decide which clubs can get extra monies to keep them alive if that's the situation that is required, or at least they can set up what they need to do to get their money there. So there's a lot to be discussed. Look, it's early days, and Gill might have said some things to the presidents the other day that raised some eyebrows. There have been other discussions, and those discussions will continue. But they'll continue being cordial at the moment because everyone needs to get to a position where they know where they're standing before this goes forward. But yes, it is a major issue.
I think Jeff Kennett was pretty horrified at some of what he was hearing, but his line broke down, so he was unable to actually put forward some of his more forthright opinions. But that 5-club block and what they do is going to be very interesting.
Well, the meeting was able to continue then, and we were able to just listen what was going on, and then we can have those discussions later. So I'm not that fussed about it at the moment, Caroline, to be perfectly honest. I think we have to just continue to work through. We all know what the pressures are on everybody, including the players. The clubs want to pay the players as much as we possibly can. The game wants to pay the players as much
we
as
have to
possibly
move on to the competition committee meeting today because everyone wants to know what the game is going to look like next year. We're looking now at all of the members of that committee, and you have been busy up there, and you've obviously been part of those talks. We're hearing that the games will be shorter next year, not 16-minute quarters, but 18. There will be blocks of games played over shorter periods again, potentially next year. And I gather, Ed, even a team like Hawthorn, for example, might go up to Queensland and play 2 games in a short period of time, and Fremantle might fly to Victoria and play a block of games over 2 or 3 weeks down here. And so those sort of cluster games have been well received. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that was actually something I put up today in the meeting, and we were all discussing it. There have been no decisions yet on any of those things, Caroline. But I'd like to put to Ross, one of the things, as you said there at the tail end, is whether or not you actually have what they call swings in America. You get on the road and you go out. So, for example, if Collingwood went to Perth, you play the West Coast Eagles and you stay there and play Fremantle, and you might actually play Port Adelaide on the way back, if you like. So you're out of town for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and you get those away games done. Similarly, and I'll put this to you, Ross, from a Fremantle point of view, having lived and worked there for 9 years, is it better for West Coast and Fremantle particularly to be able to come over and play a block of games, say 3 or 4 games in a 2 or 3 week period, and then go home for 2 or 3 months?
Instinctively, I agree, Eddie. You would take the 3-week block. It cuts out 2 extra flights, or really 4 flights, and because by the end of the year, It's the cumulative load and effect. And I think anything that could lessen that, those West Coast teams would jump at.
And Lloydie, can I throw to you what Caro threw up as well? The length of the quarters, not just the length of the quarters, we actually spoke about the length of time between goals. It's stretched out to a minute now. When you're at the game, and I went to the first game, for a long time since the round 2 on Monday, it's a real passion killer there when the ball takes a minute to get back, everyone's standing around. Might be all right on the TV when you've got an ad break going, but, finding that balance between the games going from 16 minutes to maybe back to 20 or 18 or somewhere in between. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think bring it back from a minute to 45 seconds. Even the players are waiting around wanting the ball to be bounced. And I'm for 20 minutes. Get back to, that extra 4 minutes a quarter. Yeah, I think that's what the traditionalists want, and I hope we get it.
Okay, fascinating stuff
Ross,
there with the competition committee.
Sorry, Sam, I was just going, one last one just on the competition. Umpires coming in, boundary umpires coming in 5 or 10 metres, throwing it in, so the throw-ins come further into the corridor, and the setups in that situation, and the umpires throwing the ball up quickly rather than taking too long to bounce it and letting congestion get around the ball. We need to speed the game up again.
Anything that can lessen congestion helps scoring, and the closer to the corridor, the less stoppages you get and the game flows. So I like the suggestions.